I'm Matt Miller.
And I'm Hannah Elliott, and this is Hot Pursuit.
This is going to be another one of those different audio recordings because Hannah is in a hotel room by an airport or a Formula One track or something out in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia. I'm in my basement. I just got back from a week-long high school bro trip to Colorado, so I'm kind of recovering at home, but I'm good. And how are you?
I'm good. I mean, look, we both want this to happen because we really like it. It's really fun. And I'm just happy to talk to you. I want to hear all about your trip. I want to hear about what you ended up renting. And I mean, being in Saudi Arabia maybe sounds glamorous, but I'm literally sitting on the floor with the laptop on a chair in front of the hotel room bed. And it's basically, you're right, it's an airport hotel. So
why don't you start off by telling us why you're there? What are you doing in Jeddah? Okay. And what's the Formula One layout look like?
So I'm in Jeddah for a conference that Bloomberg is throwing, and the conference is called Bloomberg Power Players Jeddah. And Bloomberg throws these types of conferences around the world. This one is focusing on the role of Saudi Arabia in sports and just all of the investments that the Saudis have made in tennis, golf, soccer, esports, Formula One, of course. And so we're just talking about the power players and the potential that is here and everything that's happening. And of course, as everybody knows, the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix is happening this weekend. And so the conference is leading into the race this weekend. So everyone's very excited. The conference is at the Jeddah Yacht Club, which is along the track, along where the track will be once they finish building it. So yeah, it feels very much in the thick of things. A lot of people are excited at this hotel. There were a bunch of workers who are Formula One workers who set up the track. It was like me and 100 of those guys. So it definitely feels like I'm right in the mix, which is very cool.
I don't follow Formula One because I watch MotoGP, and that's kicking off this weekend, by the way. So we're going to see
Exciting.
Marc Marquez riding a Ducati, which I'm pretty pumped about. But in terms of Formula One, what's the latest gossip? And do the Saudis field a team? What's the deal with Ineos? What's the deal with drivers switching around? Just give us the shorthand, kind of the cliff notes.
Okay. The latest thing that everybody's talking about is Christian Horner, of course, who's the team principal at Red Bull, who was accused of sending inappropriate texts and coercion of a lower-ranking employee. And there was an investigation which cleared him of that. But then the texts and screenshots were emailed to about 200 people in the industry and out. And so it appears he did send all of the things that he said he didn't send. And there's quite a movement spearheaded in part by Max Verstappen's dad to call for Christian Horner's ouster from the team for obvious reasons. And it's a really big deal because Red Bull is, of course, winning everything, and Max Verstappen is winning everything. And so there's a ton of drama off the track right now in Formula One. Of course, the other thing, too, is Christian Horner is married to Ginger Spice. So it's a very high profile marriage. She actually appeared with him on track hand in hand. So she seems to be standing by her man for the time being. But honestly, that's like the big drama right now. Of course, we know that, Lewis Hamilton's announcement that he's going to Ferrari is a really big deal too. But that's like old news compared to this Christian Horner thing. Yeah.
All right. So we're straying pretty far away from the world of cars, really. Let's get back to the vehicles. I'm curious to know what you see driving around there. What did you rent, or what are you driving? What's hot right now in Saudi Arabia?
Okay. A lot of really bashed up Toyota Camrys, Honda Accords. I mean, there seem to be no obvious traffic rules or enforcement or indicating. And so it's like whoever has the more busted up car gets priority in the lane. There are some small trucks, like the kind of small sort of lorries you might see in England or in elsewhere in Europe, but no like big work trucks, no F-150s, no huge Dodge Rams or anything like that.
I figure the Hilux is probably a big product there. I mean, just growing up watching Top Gear, I was always convinced that the Toyota Hilux was a truck that was everywhere else but America, and probably definitely in Saudi Arabia.
I think that's accurate. Definitely, I have not seen a single electric vehicle. I spoke with someone who said she owned a Lucid, but apparently I haven't seen any. And I was on the road for 2 hours today, so not a lot of EVs.
I figured
Mostly
there'd be
busted
like
up
Lamborghinis
Camrys.
everywhere, Rolls Royces, sheikhs like with custom made cars for their Falcons. You don't see that?
No, the nicest car I've seen actually was a white Jaguar F-Type. And it really stood out because it was by far the nicest car I've seen. And obviously, we know the supercars are here, but I don't think they're being driven in like rush hour traffic. I definitely did not see them.
I also assume in Saudi Arabia that everybody has like dune buggy racers or, something to drive in the desert. Isn't that like something that interests you while you're there?
Yes. And I'm going to report back to you on that because after the conference, I'm going to go on to Medina and then another town called Alula out in the desert. And I'm expecting that there will be the off-road buggies and like cool desert stuff there. So I'll have to get back to you on that. But I know they're here. I just need to get out there and see
we'll
them.
get some of that next week. Yeah. I will just briefly tell you that I, out in Colorado, rented on Turo for the first time. So I wasn't sure what the experience would be like, but I came away pretty pleasantly surprised in terms of just the ease and convenience of it because, I just looked through the app, picked out like a lifted Jeep with 37-inch tires on it, and, clicked, rented it, picked it up at the airport, dropped it off at the airport. It was easy. It was definitely easier than going to like Hertz. On the other hand, I didn't see the selection of incredibly cool cars that I thought I would. I was looking for something special, like a 2013 Boss 302 Laguna Seca, those Mustangs, or like some crazy lifted Super Duty truck, or just something weird or rare. And it doesn't seem like Turo's necessarily the marketplace for that. From what I saw,
Colorado?
Well, I know it's in Colorado, but there's a lot of people in Denver. There's a lot of people in Boulder. There's tons of Wall Street guys that are working out of Vail and Steamboat Springs. So I figured there would be cool cars, but those obviously aren't the people who are renting their cars on Turo. And I realized what it is either you have a fleet of vehicles that you bought for cheap and you rent them for a profit, or you're like a normal person that got in way over your head on payments, and so you rent your car to help pay for it. But it's not like, there's some car enthusiasts or collectors who are renting out their prized possessions, obviously.
Yeah. No, I don't know anyone who would do that, who actually had a cool car that liked it. No, I mean...
I just got excited because you got that Tesla Cybertruck, and so I figured there must be more people with awesome stuff. Like, I would love to see a Lucid Air, for example. I would jump on that in a heartbeat.
That'd be really cool. Do you mind if I ask how much you paid for your Turo rental?
No. So I realized there weren't going to be any special or different cars, and then I thought, okay, it's Colorado, so let me look at Jeeps and Broncos, right? The Broncos were a little bit a higher price. I guess they're more special, right? Because it's newer and there just aren't as many as there are for Wranglers. So those were like $110 to $150 a day. The Wranglers I found for much less. I think I ended up getting the one that we drove for the week for $85 a day. But the thing that Turo does that really grinds my gears is when you're searching, they say, okay, this car is, $400 for the week, not including taxes and fees. Well, why not? They have the technology to include taxes and fees in the little quote that they give you at the bottom of the screen. Because I'm going through these cars and I'm seeing like $400, $450, $500 a week. And then when I get to finally pay, it's like 700 or 800 because they
Yeah.
tack on so much. Like they should show that straight away instead of hitting me with it after I finally clicked through the whole process.
So how did the Jeep perform for you, like during the actual trip?
It was the perfect vehicle, to be honest. I mean, you've got to drive when you fly to Denver and ski in Vail, you've got to drive 2 hours out to Vail from the airport. So that part is
Little
kind
known
of,
fact.
it's not great with a lifted Jeep and 37-inch, M&T tires on it. But once we got there, I was able to drive over everything. And it wasn't so bad on the highway. Like the first day that we were driving around, it had just dumped a lot of snow. So other vehicles were, stuck or running off the road, and we were enjoying ourselves. It was a pretty pleasant experience. I mean, I know what it's like to drive a Jeep. I've driven Jeeps a lot, and usually the first day it's stressful, and then you get used to it. And now going back to a regular car is going to be kind of boring because the steering doesn't center itself. So you have to kind of do a little bit more work, but I think it ends up being fun because it's more interactive.
Yeah, I totally get that. Did they actually plow the roads, or was there snow actually on the road?
The first day that we drove out of Vail, we went west to the Iron Mountain Hot Springs, and they hadn't plowed the roads yet, so it was crazy. But otherwise, every day they were on it. I mean, in Colorado, they're used to it, so they do a pretty good job. It was a good trip.
So are you saying that you went to a hot springs with like 5 of your bros?
Yes.
Dude.
Well, we're old bros. And, I was actually thinking about this. It was after a couple days of skiing and we were just beat. Me and my friends who are all around the age of 50, we're like an internal combustion engine that needs a lot of maintenance. It needs to be properly lubricated. You've got to warm it up before you can really get on it. But it's not like we're carburetors. We still have fuel injection, and it's not like hand starters. Like we have an electric starter, But the kids that we saw on the mountain, like the 15-year-old kids, they're like EVs without even a start button. I mean, they were just going off. It was pretty great. We got a couple feet of snow, and I had a good time. I'm glad we left with no injuries.
Would you use Turo again?
I will definitely use Turo again, but I just don't find as much selection as I would have liked in Denver. And so then I started looking around New York City. It's equally bleak, I would say.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a place where Turo thrives and has an incredible collection of vehicles that you can choose from. I'm just not finding the sort of special, rare, unique cars that I was looking for. I would find them if I went to Amelia Island last weekend, which I know you did. Or did you go to Moto Miami, or did you do both?
That was a killer segue.
Thank you.
I actually went to Moto Miami, and I was very curious to see. I mean, we've talked about this a little bit, but I was so curious to see what this new event would be like. And it was really fun. There's a lot to talk about here because you've got the auctions, which are kind of a separate thing. And then you've got the event itself. And then you've got just sort of like Miami versus Amelia Island. So there are a lot of layers to it.
Well, let's remind listeners that Amelia Island is the classic concours. It's got a ton of auctions at it. It's one of the events. Like if you're a big, rich car person, this is one of the must-see or must-attend events of the year. And this year, somebody split off and decided to do another event in Miami, which is like 400 miles away, right? And so we were wondering, will the big collectors be faithful to Amelia Island and to, I guess, Hagerty, which is just bought the event, or will they go off to Miami with the upstart with Rob? What happened?
So, as you'll recall, Hagerty's auction house, Broad Arrow, took over sort of the dominant auction side at Amelia Island, which effectively forced RM Sotheby's out. So Rob Myers, who's the head of RM Sotheby's, like you said, started his own concours 400 miles south in Miami during the same weekend, which forced everyone to kind of pick, except for a few very wealthy or motivated people who did actually end up doing both, which seems like a lot. But I have to say, actually, Gooding and Company reported the highest sales for the weekend in terms of the auctions, and Broad Arrow was number 2. So Amelia Island, I don't think in terms of auction results, did not suffer at all. RM Sotheby's was number 3 for the weekend, and Bonhams was 4. So every analyst that I spoke with said, look, splitting the weekend between Miami and Amelia Island, it actually didn't affect auction results at all. People still, you can obviously still bid by phone. Cars got bought, cars got sold. It's a little volatile right now, but really the split didn't affect the auction results. I think where the split did affect people is in terms of which cars were displayed where. And like you say, Matt, this was really, these are, Amelia Island is where you show your $5 million perfect Gullwing or your Packard or your Duesenberg. So Rob did a good job. He got 8 former Pebble Beach winners on the lawn at Moda Miami, which was a pretty big deal. But, the people up at Amelia had some great showers too. They had a clash just for roof Porsches and had 14 roofs on the lawn at the same time, which, yeah, I don't think there have ever been 14 roofs together. So that's impressive. I have to say Miami, I found as a venue was a lot easier and more fun than Amelia Island just because of logistics. Amelia Island is like 45 minutes outside of Jacksonville. There's not a whole lot to do there besides the Concours, and Miami's Miami, as you know. So it's interesting. There were some missteps at Moda. I think, there was supposed to be a night Concours that didn't really pan out. Like I thought it was going to pan out. There was still a night event, but they didn't have the cars lit. So I think that may have fallen through a bit. But
I feel like I saw a video of you walking past a whole bunch of cars. It looked like you were in like
at night
a garage. It looked like you were in some kind of industrial building and you were walking past a number of black like Rolls Royces and stuff. What was that?
Oh, that was actually an art show in Los Angeles. That was a show for a Freeze Week that a friend threw, and that was just basically like an art installation of,
so nothing
random black cars, which the cars weren't significant really other than just being black, but I did think it was cool.
I see. So that's just Hannah Elliott's life.
So that was separate.
Like I saw pictures of you with Lake Bell as well at a dinner party. So this is just how you live in LA.
We love Lake, and she has graciously said that she would like to be on, so we're working on her scheduling. But Lake is a very astute car collector and enthusiast herself. So I think we really want to get her on to talk to us.
I guess her family-owned VIR.
Her taste, Matt, runs very close to yours, with sort of Pontiac, Trans Am, Firebird, that wheelhouse. So you guys would have a lot to talk about.
Love it. All right. So I just want to finish with the auction because you wrote a good story about it for Bloomberg. And I thought there was an interesting, I don't know if discrepancy is the right word, but anomaly in terms of the numbers. Because this year, total sales of all the auctions, the Florida auctions over the weekend, was 186 million and change. So that's actually a little bit more from last year. It was 178 million. So just a very little bit more. But last year, the average price of a car, I noticed, was higher. $449,000 was the average. And this year, the average price of a car was $385,000. So I guess they sold far more vehicles this year than they did last year.
Yes. And there's also this thing emerging that is sort of the natural turnover of generations, where we are seeing fewer and fewer significant cars from the 50s and 60s sell, and more significant cars from the 90s and 2000s. And those cars, the later model cars, I don't think they've actually matured with their price values. So those tend to be, they're on the rise and they're gaining popularity, but they haven't really hit their peak numbers yet. So I think that's also holding down the number of the average transaction price. It's really interesting. Of course, we still see, the racing Porsches from the 60s and the Ferraris from the 60s still obviously selling well. They're at the top. This 1903 Mercedes Simplex that sold for $12.1 million was the top seller of the weekend. So obviously that's a very old car. But then you start to see some Bugattis slip in, some Lamborghini
newer Bugattis,
Countachs slip in.
Newer
Bugattis. Yes,
like,
exactly.
Yeah. So newer Bugatti is selling.
Yeah, from after 2000.
Yeah, not the Type 35 or whatever. Yeah. Exactly. And you got like a 2000s Ferrari, right? 612 that went way higher than the estimate.
Yes.
Obviously, Lamborghinis. There's a lot of kind of a Radwood stuff as well that was selling, which is, I guess, a new... What's Radwood? Like a new festival where people dress like the 90s and buy 90s cars?
Yes. Radwood is also owned by Haggerty. And it's a series of car shows where, yes, you dress like you're from the 80s and you drive your 80s car, or like you're just quirky oddball car from, a late model collectible car or non-collectible. And it's just like a lot of neon and a lot of synthesizer music. And it's just people having fun with their cars, which is really great. And honestly, a lot of those cars are cool. And speaking of, I'm starting to see a ton of Vectors around. I don't know if you're into Vectors at all, Matt, but that's another model that all of a sudden they're just sort of showing up. So there's definitely this pull for 1990 era and later cars. It's happening.
Let's get to the new Dodge Charger, because they introduced it this week, and I think expectations were pretty low after the concept was shown, which had such a long name that I can't even remember, but it was something like Daytona Charger Banshee or whatever. Now they've introduced
oh gosh,
the new Charger, what it's actually going to look like, and I think it looks fantastic. I don't know your thoughts. I'd love to hear them. I sent you a little video, like Edmund's video doing the intro, but I've watched every single one. It looks fairly similar to the old car, to the old Challenger, I think. But you can have it in 2-door or 4-door. You can have it in electric or gas, not a V8, but an inline 6. And I'm a taker. I like it a lot.
I'm very surprised, number one, that you're not throwing a tantrum about not getting a V8. I'm shocked, actually.
Well, I have one. I have one already.
Secondly, but aren't you on principle, disturbed that just in general you can't get a Charger with a V8 anymore? I mean, I thought you'd be outraged.
Frankly, I don't really understand why. I don't mind it because I've driven that new motor, the Hurricane inline 6, in other vehicles, and I like it a lot. So I'm looking forward to that. And it doesn't take away too much from the experience. Obviously, it's a different motor than a V8, but it's not like cold or weak or small feeling. Like it's powerful and it's full and it's warm. The other thing is, I'm happy to have the power and performance of a hybrid in this new car, and I can't wait until they come out with one. That won't be until next year. I'm confused though as to why Dodge made this decision, because Ford is still making V8s in the Mustang, and Farley came out like a couple weeks ago and basically said, dude, we're going to make these until they stop us. And Porsche recently said kind of the same thing about the 911, obviously not a V8, but they said, listen, we're going to make fast internal combustion engines until regulators shoot us. Right. So everybody's going back. Mercedes recently moved back. They said they're going to stop making ICE cars by 2030, and recently
and then
said,
never mind.
Yeah, exactly.
Never mind.
I don't know why Dodge, which is like the bad boy of the car world, right? If somebody's going to get detention, it's Dodge. I don't know why they would be the one group. GM is still making the V8s too. Why would Dodge be the one group that says we're not going to do it anymore?
I don't know. I'm not even into Dodge necessarily, and I'm kind of annoyed by it. So, the other thing, I'm just looking at this video you sent me, Matt, and it looks very smoothed out. Like the body design looks super smooth, and it's tough. Obviously, it's tough to tell from a video what a car looks like in real life, but I'm a little bit worried that it's going to just look a bit bland. Do you have that concern at all?
Well, I love the way it looks, and I know what you're saying. And actually, the CEO of Dodge, Tim Kuniskis, made a comment to that point. He said something like, "We're not going to just make another melted jelly bean like everybody else." I mean, everybody from Toyota to BMW seems to have lost their stylist. Although I do love the recent i5 that I drove. Otherwise, it seems like it's just a blob. Like they're not making interesting shapes. I think this is different because it looks more like a muscle car. And Kuniskis said they took absolutely 0 steps to make it more efficient. So any efficiency that they've got out of this design is purely by chance. They're going to have, I think, 496 horsepower in the entry-level trim, the RT, and then the Scat Pack is going to have 670 horsepower. And eventually they'll have a Banshee that has 900 or 1,000 horsepower or more. They've got to rival Lucid Air with that 1,234 horsepower vehicle. So I think the future looks brighter for Dodge this week than I thought last week, basically.
Okay. Another question for you. How do you feel about the light bands across the front and the back? Like just the band of light, LED looking lights.
So I've evolved on this because I never liked it before. And I think the most famous example of a light band is the 911 Carrera 4, right? Or 4S.
Yeah,
That's
but at least that car has hip.
Yeah. Well, now Porsche's doing it on everything. And I didn't like it back in the day when I was shopping for a 911 and 10 or 15 years ago. I thought, I don't want that. But now I love it on, the new Macan has it, and the Cayenne, everything has it, and I'm starting to like it better. I like the new symbol that Dodge has, and I'm excited to hear what the fake sound sounds like.
Yeah. Excited/scared.
Yes, exactly. I might hate it, but I'm pretty psyched about this new Charger, and they're not going to use the Challenger name, by the way. So they'll have a 2-door and a 4-door Charger, but Challenger, I guess they're just keeping in their back pocket for another day.
Okay. Have they said when they're going to get some cars delivered?
No, and I actually just wrote to the company, to the people who are in charge of the fleet, to ask. There are new trucks out too, Ram trucks. And those are going to be coming much sooner than the Chargers. So I don't know when I'm going to be able to drive it, but hopefully soon, and hopefully it doesn't make me regret buying my Challenger last year, and wanting to trade up. I don't think that's going to happen.
I doubt it. I mean, yours is a V8.
Exactly. Mine is a big internal combustion V8, 392 cubic inches.
I think that's well bought.
6.4 liters, and it is a lot of fun to drive, but it won't be nearly as fast as these cars, and it won't be nearly as agile. I mean, they're still heavy, right? The new Charger weighs almost 6,000 pounds, but it's got 16-inch rotors and 6-piston brakes, at least in the front, so it'll stop. It's usually, in the age of electric cars, the speed and the agility isn't as much as we thought it was going to be, right? Without the sound and the shifting gears and the whole visceral experience, it's just not as great. I will say again, though, that the BMW i5 totally blew me away, and I can't wait to drive it again. So at least there's one electric car out there that I really want to be behind the wheel of.
This is good to know. So that's like 2 from BMW for you because you love the iX as well.
Exactly. I think those are 2 of the best cars to choose from right now. If you care about driving and you want an electric car, those are 2 I would choose. Yeah. I will say I haven't driven the Taycan. I'm sure you've driven it. I'm sure it's amazing. But I've never been behind the wheel. No, I haven't driven it.
Matt!
Is it good?
Oh, well, yes. This needs to change, definitely. And they're bringing out the electric Macan this spring. They're going to have press drives in April. So now we're going to have a second. Obviously, it's an SUV, but yeah, you definitely need to get in a Taycan because you're going to have to drive the electric Macan soon after. So
I want to. I really do want to drive a Taycan just to see what it's like. I'm excited for Matt Farah to get an electric Macan because I listen to his podcast a lot, The Smoking Tire, and he's ordered one. And then I really want to hear more details about the 911. Is it going to be a facelift? Are we going to see any serious changes? I mean, we're starting to learn more and more about the evolution of this car this year, right? We're going to see something new this year in terms of 911.
Yes, we are. And I know we've talked about this before, whether it's going to be a hybrid. There's room in the engine bay for that. They've said never electric, but, maybe hybrid. I don't have any fresh insight on that. Every time I see those guys, I ask them, and they're German, so they're very good at, following the rules and keeping it a secret. Man, I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to say because I don't want to get it wrong.
I feel like more than you're letting on. Sure. But we'll learn. I guess we'll learn more details as the year goes on. What have you got planned, Hannah, for this week coming up? Is there anything fun?
Yes. So the Power Players Conference, where I'll be moderating a panel on esports. And then after that, I'm going to fly to Medina and then drive out into the desert to a hotel called Habitas, which is in an old ancient city called Alula. They say this hotel has a reputation for sort of being like a Burning Man style hotel, which will be interesting in a country that doesn't allow alcohol or drugs. So I'm very curious what Burning Man means in Saudi Arabia, but I'll be reporting on that for Pursuits. And then after that, it's back to LA for me. I've got a few Mercedes I'm going to drive. It's my dad's 70th birthday coming up, so my whole family's coming into town.
Happy birthday, Mr. Elliott.
I know. I'm very excited. 70 is a big one for him. So yeah, what about you?
I don't have anything humongous planned. In terms of driving, I'm looking forward to getting into the new BMW S6 next week, the xDrive 40i. So it'll be the base inline six, but I think that's a really great motor. So I'm excited to drive it. And to be honest with you, I think I'm just going to go and hang around BMW and see if I can get a little bit more seat time in the i5, because I was really so excited about it when I finally got to drive it, but it was the end of my loan when I really opened it up. I don't think I appreciated it enough. So I'm going to try and do more on that.
I don't think I've ever heard you say you're going to go back to a car you've just driven and given back.
Well, the only other time I've done it is with the iX, to be honest with you. So I had that for a week and I didn't pay enough attention to it. So I asked if I could try it again. I think they're doing a really good job with their electric cars, and other than the M2, I'm not really blown away by their ICE cars right now. It's kind of the opposite of Mercedes, because, they did a great job with their electric cars, but I don't think they're really standout, and they're coming out with some amazing gas vehicles. The other thing is they have a new SL63 AMG that I really want to try. So there's a lot out there.
Yes, that's an amazing car. Yeah, that's an amazing car. The problem I have with Mercedes right now is, to your point, so many of their internal combustion engine vehicles are really good, and they're all kind of similar, and they really blur together. And even for me, whose job it is to keep them straight, sometimes it can be difficult to keep them straight. Did I drive the GLE or was it the GL something else? And
true.
Yeah, but
the SL63
the new SL is really good. AMG.
Yeah, I'm pumped. Apparently, it's like a 2+2 instead of just 2 seats up front. And I get what you're saying about, the setup is the same across the entire model lineup, but as long as it's a 4-liter V8 with 2 turbos on it, I'm going to be pretty happy about it. Well, I think that does it for this week. We'll be back at the same time, same place next week.
What?
We'll be back.
Please send us an email. If you haven't, we'd love to hear from you.
hotpursuit@bloomberg.net.
Yes, hotpursuit@bloomberg.net.
All right, shoot us an email, and we'll see you next week. I'm Matt Miller.
And I'm Hannah Elliott, and this is Bloomberg.